an icon. What you fucking do? You don't know?
No.
Viewers, you don't know who the cameraman is.
No.
You don't know why you're being made to see these things. Nor do I. You're seeing me. I can't even see you. I may be dead by the time you watch this. Very possibly are. You don't know who's the man who's making things he wants you to see. Destroy your television sets. Now. You must listen to no orders. That's all I can tell you for this point in humanity. Believe me. That's advertising.
I didn't really understand it.
We've all been waiting for it to happen. Just didn't know how it was going to rear its ugly head.
What?
The New World Order.
Population reduction.
Is that what you and Lily were filming?
Yeah. We were filming in case anything happens to us.
Tell me.
There's no going back from this, dear. Everything will change for you once you know.
Tell me.
I believe we are enslaved in a society where we will not be free to think or feel or do anything other than consume. Slaves for work to buy things beyond our means, living in fear of terrorism. I believe this is to blindside us, trick us into a situation where they, the powers that be, will wipe us out. Kill most of us. Kill all of us here.
While we have faced challenges before, this one is different. This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavor, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us. We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. But for now, I send my thanks and warmest good wishes to you all.
I believe this is to blindside us, trick us into a situation where they, the powers that be, will wipe us out. Kill most of us. Kill all of us here. They are going to reduce the population. That is what I believe.
Right now you can't go out and buy an automatic weapon. You can't go out and buy a cannon. And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. No, I'm not joking. Think about this. Think about the rationale we use, that's used to provide this, and who they're shooting at.
They are going to reduce the population. That is what I believe.
It's sad to think that there may need to be a population limit on the earth. Maybe there does. We can't keep on doing what we're doing.
I think that now I address directly to President of the United States, Biden, here from the small Israel to the big United States of America. Don't think that we will stop the war in Gaza before we put a total end to Hamas, to the supporters of Hamas, and resettling the entire area of Gaza by Jews.
There will be a global population reduction until there are only 500 million people there. Although I believe that this planet can support 2 billion humans perfectly comfortably.
How do you know that?
It's a question of space. and the resources that space has, and using those resources to survive and not exploiting them.
Almost 7 billion humans use too many resources.
Because if those bombings that took place in the Middle East were thought of as a retaliation by the terrorists, and if we thought of what we did as retaliation, certainly we're going to find more retaliation from people in the Middle East, from terrorists specifically, I should say, because most Middle Eastern people are not terrorists. And I think that's another thing that America really needs to think about, is our racism that comes from the United States towards Muslim people and towards Arabic people. And that's something that has to stop. And the United States has to start respecting people from the Middle East in order to find a solution to the problem that's been building up over many years. So I thank everyone for your patience and letting me speak my mind on that.
This leads to a very uncertain future for us all.
Right, climate change.
Climate change occurs naturally. That's why we have the Ice Age.
So now you're telling me that climate change is fake?
As you know it.
Why do you recycle? Why do you recycle?
I'm doing my bit.
So you're trying to save the planet?
Yeah.
How precious of you to think that you could save the planet. If she needed saving, especially from us, she'd just wipe us out.
Отвратительным выглядит то, что все аплодировали этому нацисту. И особенно президент Украины, в жилах которого течет еврейская кровь, еврей по национальности, стоит и аплодирует нацисту, не просто последующему нацистов, не просто идейному последователю, а именно человеку, который своими руками уничтожал еврейское население. Это он лично уничтожал. Если спикер канадского парламента говорит о том, что во время Второй мировой войны этот канадско-украинский или украино-канадский нацист сражался против русских во время Второй мировой войны, он не может не понимать, что он сражался на стороне Гитлера, а не на стороне его собственной родины, Канады. Или был фашистским коллаборационистом. В любом случае сражался на стороне нацистских войск. Допустим, он этого не знает. Я ни в коем случае не хочу обидеть чувства канадского народа. Мы относимся к Канаде, несмотря ни на что, с уважением, особенно к людям. Но если он не знает, что во время войны против России сражался Гитлер и его приспешники, то он идиот. Он, значит, просто в школе не учился, не имеет элементарных знаний. А если он знает, что этот человек сражался на стороне Гитлера, и называет его героем Украины и героем Канады, то он негодяй.
Hypothetically, if we want to conserve 80% of the planet's resources, then we should get rid of or cull that 20% of the population who are consuming them, yeah?
Hypothetically, I guess that would be a solution.
Yeah, the final solution.
We use so much of the planet's resources that there's just no balance. Soon we would have depleted the resources so much that life can't be sustained. And then everything would die.
How would they reduce the population? We're not stupid.
Hitler said, the bigger the lie, the more the people will believe it.
I think it would be done Hitler style. The armed forces are going to kill us. They'll follow orders. It's what they've been trained to do.
All the time, cases are popping up around the country. In the race between cases spreading through the population and vaccination spreading through the population, vaccination is winning. But is it moving fast enough that when lockdowns end and case numbers inevitably move into much higher figures, that death and serious illness will remain low?
Lisa, as you've mentioned, I'm glad you've seen that the momentum in the vaccine rollout is really picking up speed. But of course, this Delta variant it spreads rapidly. It's really concerning. So we do have to have two arms at play. We've got to have the lockdowns, the testing, the tracing, the isolation, and then we also need to be vaccinating as quickly as we can. And I'm committed to a national vaccine rollout because I think for the very reason you've described about outbreaks moving around, that we do need to make sure that the vaccine rollout is happening as consistently as we can. Ideally, in some areas, we'll manage to get to those high rates of vaccination before further outbreaks. But in situations like we've got in Sydney right now, which are very, very challenging, we've got to do the two concurrently. So we're working to get those vaccines into the highest priority areas as fast as we can. But all of those other measures we've got to persist with until we get the spread under control.
They're being taught to be racists. The army are already killing people in other countries. People in power are using fear to fuel the racism. How long before they use this racism to make soldiers turn on their own? Innocent people.
Some might say that if you're vaccinated because you're required to in order to keep your job, you've been forced to get vaccinated. That's not right, and that's not being truthful at all. That is not correct. If you want to work with vulnerable people, you need to do a police check. If you want to work with kids, you do have to have a working with children check. That is the way it is, and we do that to keep people safe. How about that? We put others before ourselves. You can decide not to choose those checks. No one's forcing you. But if you don't do them, you can't work where you want to work. It's as simple as that. That is the way it is. If you want to work as a cabbie, you need a licence to drive a cab. People without licences are not being discriminated against. If you want to work in aged care, you need to have a flu vaccine. And that rule has been in place before COVID-19 was even a twinkle in a Chinese bat's eye, for goodness sake. That's the way it is. You have a right to choose. You don't have a right to put vulnerable people's lives at risk. You don't have that right. And so you shouldn't have that right. You don't have the right to go into an aged care home unvaccinated and risk starting a COVID outbreak for the elderly. I have constituents with autoimmune conditions who run businesses. If they're forced to serve unvaccinated customers, they'll have to choose between risking their lives or shutting down their businesses. You don't have the right to force them to make that choice either.
Living in a police state.
It's already begun. Controlling and monitoring the movement of individuals within the society. Putting chips in passports, ID cards, CCTV.
After she refused to comply with an officer's request, the woman and her male passenger argued they were not in the officer's jurisdiction and were not driving but rather travelling in the area.
You guys don't even know what you're on about.
I need your most senior on duty.
You don't know. You don't have any jurisdiction on this land. Look out! You're under arrest. You're a creep. Yep. Yeah, man, I would love to just get you one-on-one.
The New South Wales Police Force is struggling to attract recruits, raising concerns about the size of the force in the future. The number of officers retiring has almost doubled in the past 4 years as recruitment numbers fall. It's placed attention on response times, but the Police Association New South Wales president insists there are no threats to public safety. There are calls for the government to offer people incentives to join the force.
They're using this orchestrated ruse to convince the public to accept Big Brother-type controls. And then they will intentionally reduce the mass of the world's population. Mass genocide on a scale never seen before. There are a mass of ways they could introduce population slaughter.
An ITV News report from Gaza has become the focus of attention across the country and around the world. It was mentioned today in Parliament for highlighting possible Israeli war crimes. It shows a Palestinian man under the protection of a white flag being shot dead in a location where Israeli troops were operating. The leader of the SNP in Westminster, Stephen Flynn, suggested that amounted to a war crime. Yesterday, the Israeli Defence Forces told us they were not aware of the incident and they claimed we had edited the pictures. Well, today, they would not comment. We first showed the images on News at 10 last night and are about to do so again. Now, they are, by their very nature, extremely distressing and not everyone will want to watch. Our senior international correspondent, John Irvine, who compiled yesterday's hard-hitting report, now examines the reaction to it.
On last night's News at 10, we broadcast these pictures filmed by a cameraman working for ITV News in Gaza. While focusing on civilians vacating an area now being fought over, he came across this group of men who wanted to retrace their steps to get other relatives out of the danger zone. After interviewing 51-year-old Ramzi Abu Salul, the cameraman walked away and then filmed this. Mr. Abu Salul was shot in the chest. Here you can see his blood seeping into the white flag that he had hoped would be their shield. As the group of men tried to extricate his body, there was more gunfire. Our coverage of this incident was raised in the House of Commons this afternoon during Prime Minister's questions.
Mr. Speaker, last night as Tory MPs were once again fighting amongst themselves, the public were sat at home watching John Irvine of ITV News report on footage from Gaza of an unarmed Palestinian man walking under a white flag, being shot and killed by the IDF. Prime Minister, such an act constitutes a war crime, does it not?
Mr. Speaker, we've been absolutely consistent that international humanitarian law should be respected and civilians should be protected. I've made that point expressly to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the Foreign Secretary is in the region this week making exactly the same point.
More staged events, orchestrated and manoeuvred conflicts, and the use of bioengineered diseases. Vaccines. They could come in vaccines. Women are being encouraged to get sterilised. What if they're using cervical cancer jabs? Not this generation, but the next. Prevention and cure for cancer. Or having babies.
That's madness.
You're right. They'd never wait 2 generations.
A large number of Australians are resisting getting COVID booster shots, just as authorities prepare to recommend a 5th dose for our most vulnerable.
It might seem as though COVID has dropped from our radar despite thousands of new infections every day. A poll for the Sydney Morning Herald and Age newspapers by Resolve Strategic has found a fall in the number of us willing to go from 3 to 4 doses. In fact, that's the case for 24% of over 65s who are considered more vulnerable. The poll shows overall 36% have had their 4th vaccination, 40% have had 3, 17% have had just 2, and 1% only 1. 6% remain totally unvaccinated.
I don't feel that I can die of it, you know?
In the event that I'm reincarnated, I like to come back as a deadly virus. So to contribute to solving overpopulation. Prince Philip said that. Bioengineered pathogens are being created to eliminate ethnic groups, such as blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, homosexuals.
Homosexuals? Surely that would keep the population down.
Yes, but it's not nature's way.
Take COVID. The fact that scientists developed safe, effective vaccines in record time is an unbelievable achievement. And yet, despite the fact that we've now essentially clinically tested the vaccine on billions of people worldwide, around 1 in 5 Americans is still willing to put themselves at risk and put their families at risk.
I have great respect for you folks. It's amazing what you do. And I just want to introduce another great one,
Kate Rubins is with us today, and she has been so impressive in research and so many other things having to do with NASA. And Kate, I understand you're the first person to sequence DNA in space. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that was actually just this last summer, and it's a real example of what we can do with technology and innovation. We've gotten a sequencer down to the size of your cell phone, and we were actually able to fly that on board the space station and sequence DNA. It's not just the technology demonstration, but we can actually use that to do things like detect microbes on the space station, look at astronaut health. We can easily use that in Earth-based settings, too, to look for disease outbreaks and to do rural health care as well.
That's fantastic. That is really great. I saw some of the work, and it's incredible. You know, I've been dealing with politicians so much. I'm so much more impressed with these people. You have no idea.
And yet, despite the fact that we've now essentially clinically tested the vaccine on billions of people worldwide,
love is not a factor when you're dealing with how the few procreate.
Natural selection, where the only natural element is the powers that be.
Population control already happens in China. You have to have a license before you can have a second child.
Come on, Dion. How many times have you thought about how unfair it is that you have to work to have a good life, whereas others breed and get given benefits and homes?
Lydia Thorpe's had enough.
So where is my support? F*** off, you!
Threatened again online by purported neo-Nazi.
This is a message to the Australian government and Senator Lydia Thorpe.
Burning the Aboriginal flag with a Nazi salute. Images we've chosen not to broadcast. The response, angry, explosive, laced with obscenity, blaming the Prime Minister.
He wants the f***ing fascists to come out and get me?
Leaving Anthony Albanese searching for words.
I'm not going to engage in a debate.
In protection away from her home after previous threats.
I've been in exile for 4 months because people want to kill me out there.
Railing against the police, declaring she won't hide anymore.
The referendum is an act of genocide against my people.
How often have you wondered, like many others, what real value they bring to the world?
Population reduction programs eliminate a mind-blowing 95% of the population.
Eugenics is the pseudoscience of culling the excess population.
Fake science.
Got that.
Who's your clever girl?
Are you tired of all that's happening? Do you feel just about done with the whole lot of it? If it's any comfort, I know I do. Whatever we're being sold now, forever war, fear of pandemic, net zero, and all that lunacy demands, I don't want it. I don't want any of it. And so I ask again a question I will keep asking. Who are we? What is our species all about? What is our so-called Western civilization supposed to be? It seems to me the only point of our civilization now is money, the creation and pursuit of money, and that the best way to make money is to make war. To make war and care not a jot which side wins. Indeed, to care not a jot whether any side wins, as long as the consequence of every war is another war. We were told long ago that the love of money is the root of all evil, also that whoever saves one life saves the world entire. The budget for the US Pentagon is predicted sometime very soon to reach $1 trillion a year. The US economy, still the biggest in the world, depends on war, depends upon the sale of weapons of war. That means the US government depends on war too, war somewhere or everywhere, just to balance the books, or at least to sell the fantasy that those books could ever balance. It's demonstrably the case that US arms manufacturers sell their wares to anyone able to pay, regardless of how they're to be used, regardless of whether civilians are the targets. A 2022 report for the Quincy Institute revealed that of the 46 active wars in the world that year, 34 involved one or more parties armed by the United States. Sometimes the US arms companies were arming both sides. The Saudi United Arab Emirates-led intervention in Yemen between 2015 and now has killed 400,000 and counting. The war in Ukraine has earned hundreds of billions for weapons manufacturers and killed 500,000 more. Overlooked and sidelined by more recent events, that war is still going on, still making money. But war in the Ukraine is yesterday's news compared to the latest war in the Middle East. Are we happy with this kind of thing? As the 21st century grinds forwards, is this and more of this all we must look forward to, or does something have to give?
It'll be done in a barbaric fashion using draconian methods, and this global holocaust will probably come out from under the flag of the UN.
I can almost imagine us being frog-marched away from our homes in a martial law kind of way. No one bats an eyelid.
Almost 95% of the population.
13 out of every 14 people killed, destroyed, and murdered.
Lincoln, we'll start with you. Has the ADF become too politically correct?
Well, clearly it has. We've just seen and heard these dire circumstances that the ADF is in. Look, the ADF is an atypical workforce. Its primary overarching objective is to be able to deliver extreme violence to defend Australia, to defend our interests, and to defend, quite frankly, our entire maritime approaches because we are a trading nation. Now, anything that undercuts that, and including the massive defence bureaucracy, anything that they're doing, anything that they're spending money on or in policies that do not support that overarching objective is a waste of time. And now what we're seeing at the moment is that we're not choosing ADF members and personnel primarily on merit. We want the best, most capable candidates, and we do not need the government and the department to be spending a lot of money on things like coming up and being a member of ACON. Now, ACON is the AIDS Council of New South Wales. It is now a national organisation primarily funded by government. But the Australian Department of Defence is a foundation member and a principal partner, and they have to undergo, we got this from the Freedom of Information, the Australian Workplace Equality Index, which means they're changing dress codes, IT systems, and all of these things to fit in with this, and I'll give this to the jury to have a look at later, and that is not what the focus should be.
Yeah, OK. Look, Neil, in your experience then, and as we said in the introduction and just alluding to what we've just heard from Lincoln, there's all these different changes to make it gender neutral, more politically correct. Is the ADF going woke?
No.
Why?
Look, the problem is this is a cyclical problem, and you can't look at recruitment without also looking at retention. They're two sides of the one coin. But the biggest problem we face essentially comes down to two things. This country has chronically underinvested in defence, both financially and culturally, for many years under governments of both political persuasions, and that's why we're in the pickle we're in. And the second thing is demographics is working against us. The Australian Defence Force is the youngest industry in the country. Half the Defence Force is under 25 years of age. 2/3 of the Defence Force roughly is under 35. And they, as a percentage of the total Australian population, those age cohorts, particularly the 17 to 25, is the lowest it's been since Federation. And so we're trying to recruit into a young industry from a very small part of the Australian population, and it is very, very hard. Now, it's made harder by many other things, but many of them are cultural reasons. Some of them have to do with the ethnic breakup of the country now. But being woke, or too woke, would be a very minor part of it, for the simple reason is that the Defence Force of any democracy has to be representative of the society it comes from. It's not a military caste, it's not a warrior elite. They are normal Australians who choose to help defend our country, and that's the key part of the problem.
Right, so you're saying demographics, that's the key issue here.
Danica, look, I don't think the ethnic breakup of our nation has anything to do with it. Yes, it's not a warrior caste, but it is an atypical workforce. This is not the Department of Health. As I said, we in the ADF, our primary objective is to deliver lethal violence against other militaries, because that's what they will do. They get the best that they can, they train them, and they come to either take our interests or to coerce us, to surround us, and that's what we have a military for, and that's what we have an Australian Defence Force for. And we need to have leadership from the top, from Prime Minister Albanese to the Defence Minister Richard Marles, going to the Australian public and saying, enter the Australian Defence Force because this is who we are, this is the values we represent, and this is what you're going to do to serve your nation, duty, honour, and those sorts of values that we pride ourselves on and have prided ourselves on for the last 200 years.
I call Senator Babette. Thank you, Acting Deputy President, and I rise here in support of Senator Hanson's matter of public importance. As a proud Australian, just like Senator Hanson, I believe that we should do all that we can to unite our beautiful nation. I love Australia, and I'll proudly fight to preserve my home for future generations. Now, on October 14th, what happened? The Australian people overwhelmingly voted to reject the government's plan to permanently enshrine an Indigenous voice to Parliament within our Constitution. Every single state voted no, resoundingly against this proposal. But senators will be mistaken to think that this was merely a vote against constitutional change. You know what? It was more than that. This was a vote against racial division. This was a wholesale rejection of continuous efforts to divide Australians by race. Now, on October 14th, Australians got to say in the privacy of a ballot box what they unfortunately dare not say in public because of fear. Fear from far-left Marxist extremists. Now, it's true that Australians sit politely through welcome to country ceremonies, but I'm sure everybody is thinking the same thing. Why are we being welcomed to our own home? It's nonsensical.
Frank, what happened then?
Well, whilst I was standing in the middle of Swanson Street waiting for Di to get out of the dress shop, I heard a lot of noise and music and chanting, so I walked out to the middle, and there, 100 metres away towards Burke Street, was thousands of flags, Palestine flags, Aboriginal flags, chanting, singing, and within 2 minutes, a police officer approached me and said, "You are under arrest for inciting a riot." I said, "What? How?" He said, "With your flags on your head." I said, "Today is Australia Day, and I've just returned from the Shrine of Remembrance 21-gun salute." And he started to walk me off the middle of the road.
And these flags he's taken exception to?
These are the ones I had in my head.
The very ones you got there?
Yep.
In order to stabilise world population, they need or want to dispose of 6.5 billion people.
Dear friends, for 2 years now, we have been witnessing a global coup d'etat in which a financial and ideological elite has succeeded in seizing control of part of the national government, public and private institutions, the media, the judiciary, politicians and religious leaders. All of these, without distinction, have become enslaved to these new masters who ensure power, money and social affirmation to their accomplices. Fundamental rights, which up until yesterday were presented as inviolable, have been trampled underfoot in the name of an emergency. Today, a health emergency, tomorrow, an ecological emergency, and after that, an internet emergency. This global coup d'etat deprives citizens of any possibility of defense, since the legislative, executive, and judicial powers are complicit in the violation of law, justice, and the purpose for which they exist. It is a global coup d'etat, because this criminal attack against citizens extends to the whole world, with every very rare exception. It is a world war where the enemies are all of us, even those who unwittingly have not yet understood the significance of what is happening. It is a war fought not with weapons, but with illegitimate rules, wicked economic policies, and intolerable limitation of natural rights. Supranational organizations, financed in large measure by the conspirator of this coup d'etat, are interfering in the government of individual nations and in the lives, relationships, and health of billions of people. They are doing it for money, certainly, but even more. So in order to centralize power so as to establish a planetary dictatorship. It is the great reset of the World Economic Forum, the Agenda 2030 of the United Nations. It is the plan of the New World Order, in which a universal republic enslaves everyone and a religious of humanity counsels faith in Christ.
It's one thing to borrow $1 trillion, as we in Australia are not quite there, but pretty close, at 1%.
Yes.
It's another thing to borrow $1 trillion at 4%. Even if you just held your debt steady at $1 trillion, the cost of it, the interest cost, is going to go from about 10 billion to 40 billion. It's going to go up $30 billion, right?
By about, what, 2030?
Well, yeah, as it rolls around.
As it rolls around?
Right.
I'm just talking about projections.
Yeah.
So 6 or 7 years' time now.
Yep.
Before
some of it's already rolling up, by the way.
Yes.
Because it's when your bonds roll off, and some of it won't roll off for another 5 years, and some very small amount won't roll off for 10 years. But on average, over time, what we were borrowing at 1% will move to whatever the rates are now, 4%, let's say. That's $30 billion of extra interest, right? Well, $30 billion, just to put this in context, that's the Medicare system.
Yeah, that's right. So before you've done anything,
that's just your cost.
Yeah.
And
whether
the
you're
most
doing
recent,
hospitals,
the
whether
most
you're
recent
doing
budget
roads,
here in
schools,
Australia said here's a trick question. Fastest growing area of government spending in the last year, interest costs.
Yeah.
Well, you go back to 2006, 2007. What was our net debt to GDP ratio? 0. Actually, it was minus.
It was minus. Yeah,
right?
that's right.
We actually had money in the bank.
The future fund.
You want to go and have a look at the Brits or the Americans? They were already up around 30, 40, right? So
losing control, which is the point. We're at 60 now.
Yeah.
Further shocks will lose control, just like they did.
Yeah, and so if we'd have gone in at the levels that they'd have gone in, we'd be at 100 now, right? But we didn't. We went in at 0, right? So it's total federal and state, 60, federal, 40. But next time we'll come out at 100. We're sort of, and when you hear people, this is always, fascinates me, people, often big spending people say, oh, we can afford to borrow more because, by comparison, our debt to GDP ratio is low. It's only low because we actually paid it all off in 2007. If we hadn't have done that, if we'd have emulated the Brits or the Americans or anything, it would be exactly the same as theirs. And of course, mostly the people who say, oh, it's low, we can afford to borrow more, were the people who opposed paying it off back then. So, let's take the benefit of the policy we opposed back then. Oh, okay, that's politics, isn't it?
But my response to that is to say, just understand, we are at the point where other major economies lost control.
Yeah, you lose control.
And for those of my beloved listeners, and I say this really sincerely, whose eyes are glazing over saying that's just an argument about economics, a sweet set of numbers. It's not. You're closely tying it to outcomes for people, particularly young people. That's the point.
Young people. This is the point. The young people, that debt, that $1 trillion debt, which they didn't borrow, right? Wasn't borrowed when they were adults in the world. That $1 trillion debt becomes their debt, and the 40 billion of interest payments becomes their payment year after year after year after year, right? So that's what you need. You need another $40 billion in addition to their schools, their hospitals, their defence, and then another 40 billion for what happened back here.
I think these things are incredibly important, as you think and as I think. And I think one of the problems, to pay you a compliment, and tentatively, nervously say this, perhaps even your predecessor, and we might have disagreed with him politically, but you explain things. No one's explaining this now. So young people are inclined, I don't want to be down on them, that's not my objective, but they've been fed a constant diet of government can solve this problem. No one points out the obvious. It's actually governments don't have money, and when they spend money, it belongs to taxpayers. And if today's taxpayers don't live within their means, then the children,
that's right,
when they're adults, and this is they're worried about flatlining wages and increasing asset prices now. All of this simply promises to make it worse.
Let he who is without sin cast the first stone.
Looks like Homer Stokes is the kind of fellow who wants to cast the first stone.
Yah without sin can cast the first stone.
Well, I admit it looks bad, Flanders. But haven't you heard of let he who is without sin cast the first stone?
Oh, got him, Dad!
Remember how I said last night that the Melbourne tennis crowd was speaking for the nation when they booed the Prime Minister? Well, it was pretty obvious, right? He lied to us, broke a promise. What did he expect? Well, have a listen to the ABC this morning. They ran the Labor defence that all politicians get booed.
What prompts a crowd to boo, particularly a political leader? Luke Sidham-Dunnan has more.
From time to time, you'll hear it at any Australian sports match, but it's a certainty if a Prime Minister is present.
Really? It always happens? How could the ABC prove that point, do you reckon? Or have it endorsed? Well, after the ABC host through to the ABC reporter, he interviewed another ABC host, Waleed Ali, who conveniently agreed that the booing had nothing to do with a broken tax promise and a lying PM.
Sports tragic and co-host of The Minefield on RN, Waleed Ali, told me that probably didn't have anything to do with it.
Well, booing Prime Ministers at sporting events is a rich Australian tradition. Frankly, it would be a shock if it didn't happen.
A shock if it didn't happen. Well, I showed you how Albo won applause at the same place last year.
The Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister.
It's only this year that it's turned into jeers and booing. But now the ABC says the booing doesn't matter because it always happens to all Prime Ministers. So the official ABC line is forget the booing, right? Well, no. Such are the contortions at the public broadcaster that they have to dismiss the booing against Albo as insignificant, but talk up other booing as being very telling, like when footy crowds booed AFL Indigenous legend Adam Goodes.
I think you've got to separate or make distinctions in your booing. I think it's unfortunate that the Adam Goodes example gets brought up around Australian crowds booing all the time because I think it was such an exceptional case, and the fact that Australian crowds boo a lot was used as cover for something really sordid that was going on, and that wasn't a rank expression of racism. But it was such an exception.
You've got to make distinctions in your booing. That's what he said. They're hilarious, aren't they? This is just too much. Let me make it simpler for the ABC. People boo because they mean it. It's ugly. Don't try and pick and choose which boos register and which don't. Don't let your politics overcomplicate the simple topic of booing.
Judges from Britain, America, Russia and France assemble in Nuremberg's courthouse. Empowered to impose sentence of death or such punishment as it may consider just, the tribunal sits in judgment upon 20 leaders of the Nazi Party. After a first day spent in reading the 30,000-word indictment, the unemotional tones of Lord Justice Lawrence, President of the Court, open the second day's proceedings.
On Thursday, the 18th of October, 1945, in Berlin, the indictment was lodged with the tribunal, and a copy of that indictment in the German language has been furnished to each defendant and has been in his possession more than 30 days.
So begins the case of humanity against the makers of war.
The defendants to plead guilty or not guilty to the charges against them. Hermann Wilhelm Goering.
Thinner and without the notorious medals, the once mighty Nazi number 2 still postures in the limelight. While he waited in the dock, he wrote a statement which he tried to read before entering his plea. He said, "Before I answer the question whether I am guilty or not guilty," and that was as far as he got.
Bevor ich die Frage des Gerichtshofes beantworte, ob ich mich schuldig oder nicht schuldig bekenne, I informed the court that defendants were not entitled to make a statement. You must plead guilty or not guilty. Bekenne mich im Sinne der Anklage nicht schuldig.
Furious, the one-time Reichsmarshal shouts, "I declare myself not guilty." And now Hess, the mentally hazy Hess, the lost memory man.
Rudolf Hess. That will be entered as a plea of not guilty.
The Ribbentrop, pale, nervous, picks up the refrain of not guilty.
Bekenne mich im Sinne der Anklage für nicht schuldig.
Object lessons in psychology. The character of each comes out in the manner of his not guilty plea.
Wilhelm Keitel. Ich bekenne mich nicht schuldig. Wilhelm Frick.
Ex-Minister of the Interior.
Nicht schuldig. Julius Streicher.
Pronounced sane by medical experts, Jew-baiter number 1 stands trial with arrest.
Nicht schuldig. Walter Funk.
This is Hitler's ex-economic advisor.
Ich kenne mich nicht als schuldig. Hjalmar Schacht.
Hitler's money wizard varies the words, but still pleads not guilty.
Ich bin in keiner Weise schuldig. Erich Raeder.
Ex-U-boat chief.
Ich bekenne mich nicht schuldig.
The Nazi youth leader.
Waldo von Schirach. Ich bekenne mich im Sinne der Anklage als nicht schuldig. Arthur Seyss-Inquart.
Ex-Gauleiter of Holland.
Ich bekenne mich nicht schuldig. Albert Speer.
Now the backroom Nazi and armaments chief.
Nicht schuldig.
There have always been ambitious and ruthless men ready to gamble with the lives of their fellows. Now, for the first time, international gangsters stand trial as common criminals. Goering still trying to read his statement and still getting nowhere.
You are not entitled to address the tribunal except through your counsel at the present time.
Opening the Allied case against the defendants, Chief American Prosecutor Justice Jackson.
Of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated.
You know, after 8,500 people on what was then our biggest domestic support operation, Operation Bushfire Assist, we've rolled straight into Operation COVID Assist. We've now had more than 13,000 people involved in COVID Assist, and And we still have 1,600 people across the country, some of them away from their friends and family for a second Christmas in a row. Massive undertaking, but I'm extremely proud of everything that all of our people have achieved. I'm most proud of not only what they've done, but how they've done it. We've found ourselves involved in things this year that I think few of us would ever have imagined. Everything from producing face masks in factories, to helping out in aged care facilities, to running COVID testing stations, to doing contact tracing calls. It's been a really diverse range of tasks, but all of our men and women have stepped up, adapted really quickly, and it's been really pleasing to see the response of the public. The public have found their contributions really reassuring, so I'm really proud of that, just what they've done and how they've done it. It's tough being away at Christmas time. I've been away for a couple of Christmases as well, but the work you're doing is really important. You're helping keep our Australian citizens safe. It's very appreciated and it's important. So yes, it's hard to be away, but thank you very much for everything you're doing. And to our friends and families as well, who've given us all of the tremendous support through the year. Thank you to you as well.
Being held accountable for your own actions isn't called discrimination. It's called being, you wouldn't believe it, a goddamn bloody adult. That's right as being an adult. It's putting others before yourself. And that's what this country's supposed to be about. The way out of lockdowns and restrictions is vaccinations, because there is nothing else on the table. Let's be honest about that. It is the only weapon we have. And we need to do everything we possibly can to keep ourselves safe, our kids safe, our grandchildren safe.
I get very emotional even listening to that. Just talk us through it.
I think for me, I've been on the ground a lot in Tasmania, obviously coming into a campaign. I didn't come up to the last sitting so I could go out there, speak to those Tasmanians, and you can see that taste of freedom where most of them have gone up and said, I'm making a choice, I'm going to be vaccinated, I want my freedoms back. And really, let's be realistic, Jackie, is there anything else on the table? I'm going, there is nothing else on the table. This is the only weapon of defence we've got to fight it. So, you can see that momentum going there. And usually the majority just goes, OK, we'll deal with it, we'll just be quiet. They're not going to be quiet. They want their freedoms back, they really do, and they really are concerned about... We've been very lucky in Tasmania, we haven't had much of a bite of it. I think we've been into lockdown once, and Hobart had a bite, the southern end, only probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago for 3 days, and I can tell you they don't like it, and they're frightened,
Opening the Allied case against the defendants, Chief American Prosecutor Justice Jackson.
Of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored, because it cannot survive their being repeated.
Viewers, you don't know who the cameraman is.
No.
You don't know why you're being made to see these things. Nor do I. You're seeing me. I can't even see you. I may be dead by the time you watch this. Very possibly are. You don't know who's the man who's making things he wants you to see. Destroy your television sets. Now. You must listen to no orders. That's all I can tell you for this point of humanity. Believe me.
As a citizen of the United States, you are part of the most violent, genocidal, imperialistic empire the world has ever known. Your silence is complicity.
Good Lord, Mickey. And if you're wondering if this one will jerk it from inside the costume, to that we say...
Oh, I'm doing it right now.
And we wouldn't have it any other way. So the offer is on the table.
Look, a soldier has died. And you shouldn't be trying to turn this into a subsequent media circus.
The soldiers shouldn't. I shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I'm not turning it into a media circus. I'm showing you vision of your reaction to his explanation about what happened on the day in the operation that, in which McKinney was killed. How's that turning into a media circus? Okay, well, tell me, what's the context, and if it's out of context, what is the context? You're not saying anything, Tony.
I've given you the response you deserve.
President Biden, President Biden, President Biden, Mr. Blinken, can you hear me? Prime ministers and presidents of the European countries, can you hear me? Can you hear the screams from Shifa Hospital, from Al-Aud Hospital? Can you hear the screams from innocent people, refugees, sheltering, trying to find a safe place, being bombed by the Israeli attack forces this morning inside the hospital? Hospitals that are the temples of humanity and protection. When are you going to stop this?
We're seeing a lot of the left's depravity allegedly connected to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, you're also working to uncover his infamous client log from his private jet, a motion the Democrat Senator Dick Durbin is trying to block. Congressman, why do you think so many Democrats are committed to protecting the list of a dead pedophile? What possible national security implications could that have?
What you see in so many times, my dear friend Marsha Blackburn, I thought she was snubbed. That's why I got involved with it. She can handle her own, but when the Democrat-controlled Senate did that, I went to Chairman Comer in the Republican-controlled House, and I said, we need to fix this. This is wrong. And too many of my colleagues, I'm afraid, are compromised in this area for whatever reason. Somebody's whispered in their ear, said, hey, you don't want something to come out on something else. You better keep your mouth shut on this. And that's exactly what they've done. And it continues to go, whether it's the honeypot that the Russians used to use or something worse. I don't know, but it's clearly, you see that up and down the line. You see good conservatives vote for liberal policies, and frankly, you see some liberals occasionally that will vote for something else. So obviously, the Congress has been compromised, and this continues on through the White House, through the Justice Department. The trash can is very deep. It's not a swamp, it's an open sewer.
We are here to do a simple task, to tell Israel and the world to know that we are on the side of Palestine. We are not neutral, because neutrality during the difficult times is equal to selling out. Palestinians will remember the silence of those who kept quiet during difficult times. We are here today in Pretoria, the heart of apartheid. The reason why we are able to come and march here today and do it freely, without soldiers carrying guns, without police carrying guns, without us being intimidated, is because the people of the world stood with us during difficult times. It was the people of Nigeria who took their money from their salaries and donated to liberation movement for us to get our freedom. It was the anti-apartheid movement in America, in UK, in many other parts of the world, where the world stood in solidarity with us and said, we will not sit down and watch the Afrikaner apartheid regime killing our people in South Africa. That's why we have our freedom today. We are here to extend the same favor to the children of Palestine. The war in Palestine is not a holy war, it's an evil war. Because even here, the apartheid Afrikaner regime used to say they are the chosen ones, used to say they are children of God, and we are animals. So when the Minister of Defense of Israel calls Palestinians animals, we know what he means, because we were called animals ourselves here in South Africa by those who were claiming they were sent by God. There is no holy war there. There is an evil war. And we must always stand against the evil. Comrades, what type of government do we have in Israel that goes and bomb a hospital where people have run away for refugee, where people are sick, where children are there, where pregnant women are there? You bomb a hospital and you say you are looking for Hamas, but you are killing innocent children. There is nothing wrong Hamas did. This folk tongues and people speaking in parables and we don't know what they are hearing, what they are saying, it's wrong. When you are oppressed, the only option you have is to fight. And that's what Hamas is doing. They are fighting for their freedom. Mandela did the same thing, took up the guns and fought for the freedom of the people of South Africa. When you are oppressed, you only have one option: confront the enemy and shoot to kill. Do not kiss the enemy. Why do you want to kiss the enemy? People came, took the land of the Palestinians. Every year they extend their occupation. When you look at the map of Palestine, there is nothing left of land in Palestine. The people of Palestine have got nothing to lose but their chains. They must stand up and fight for their freedom, and condemning Hamas is an act of cowardice. I heard some fools saying we can't compare Hamas with Mandela and them. They are the same. This president of Areta carried guns. He was shooting to kill, to liberate you. He was doing exactly what Hamas is doing. O.R. Tambo did the same thing. Chris Hani did the same thing. Winnie Mandela did the same thing. Steve Biko did the same thing. There is nothing wrong Hamas is doing. But where did this ANC and MK get money to have guns, to have ammunition, to have food? The international progressive world gave them guns, gave them food, gave them their camps, Cuba gave them doctors. They were called terrorists, like Hamas is called terrorists, but people did not see terrorists in them, they saw liberators. The EFF, when it takes over next year, is going to arm Hamas and make sure Hamas has got the necessary equipment to fight for their freedom. Netanyahu is a #1 terrorist, and he must be declared everywhere he goes. He must never know peace, because he's a #1 world terrorist, and the world must fight against terrorists. A murderer, a person who's committing genocide in Palestine in the name of attacking Hamas, yet is attacking innocent women and children. He says to them, I'm giving you 24 hours to leave Gaza, or else I'm coming in. As the people are walking out of Gaza, scared of Israel, he's shooting those innocent people. Yet he's the one who said leave. When they are leaving, he's killing them. It can't be that the people of South Africa, who are beneficiaries of international solidarity, sit back and allow this nonsense to go on. We don't want apartheid Israel. And when we say we don't want apartheid Israel, it must never be confused with the fact that we are saying we don't want the Jews. It's not true. There are a lot of white people in South Africa when we're fighting a white apartheid regime. One of them is here. He joined the struggle against white apartheid in South Africa. Yet he was white because he never saw that struggle as a struggle against white people. He saw it as a struggle to liberate the oppressed masses of our people. So where are the progressive Jews to stand up and say we do not associate ourselves with Netanyahu? No one must go around saying we are fighting with Jews, not in our name. We are not fighting with Jews, we are fighting with an apartheid Israel, and it shall fall. It's just a matter of time before the illegitimate government of Israel falls. Comrades, we are not only going to arm Hamas, we are going to remove this embassy. Because we can't stay with murderers in the same area, breathe the same air with people who kill innocent people. Don't listen to those who are here on Friday coming for PR. They've got the power to remove this nonsense behind this truck. They are not removing it. Why? They are getting money from the Israeli government. That's why they are scared of the Israeli government. Cyril Ramaphosa was made a president with the money donated to him by the Jewish people who are behind this Israeli embassy and the Israeli government. Those who gave Cyril money are the Jewish people who are not progressive, are Jewish people who want to perpetuate the apartheid Israel and the oppression of Palestine. That's why Cyril can't say anything. He went to the ANC, NEC, wear a scarf. Yes, says. Those Jewish people were like, "Wena, you wear a scarf with Palestinian scarf with our money." He had to issue a statement to explain himself. There is nothing to explain, even ourselves when we live here. We are not explaining anything to anyone. We make no apology for being here. Comrades, call to action. McDonald's is giving the soldiers of Israel food in Israel. We want McDonald's South Africa to distance itself from what is happening in Israel. They've got until the end of this month to issue a statement distancing themselves from what McDonald's is doing in Israel, giving murderers food to murder women and children. Comrades, Woolworths has got a responsibility by end of this month to remove every product on their shelves that comes from Israel. If they don't remove products from Israel, we'll go and remove them ourselves. We don't want any product of Israel sold here in South Africa. We don't want the food that comes from the people who have blood of innocent people on their hands. We are warning all those who are in business with Israel. We are coming for you because you are the ones who make that government to be what it is. If we engage in an international boycott of all products that come from Israel, Israel will hear that now we have to respect the rights of Palestinians. Comrades, we must never get tired. We will come here as and when we feel like all the time. President of Pudemo, these marches are very impactful. This is what liberated us, and this is what is going to liberate Palestine. We will always come here to remind these people that we don't want what's happening in Palestine. Comrades, the role of embassy is to collect intelligence for their countries. So all embassies of Israel in the world, when they file every day, there was a protest at the embassy. There was a protest at the embassy. One day, that government will listen, because they will know that the world doesn't agree with what they are doing. Comrades, we must make sure that those who support Palestine, especially our brothers and sisters who believe that Palestine is under attack, this nonsense of Israel can only be stopped if South Africa takes a position and say leave. The whole African continent will join, the whole progressive international world will join and say Palestine embassies must leave. So today we have no memorandum. To give who memorandum? Because these people are not a government. These are thugs. These are terrorists here. And we can't legitimize terrorists. We must never give them the respect that we give to the deputy ambassador of Palestine. These people here have got no respect for humanity and for life. Therefore, we must never find ourselves in any cooperation, none whatsoever, with the Israeli embassy. We are happy that the African Union refused to give Israel an observer status in the African Union. We don't want only that. We want a resolution of the African Union that says the embassies of Israel in the whole of Africa must go until the people of Palestine find their peace. So fighters, by coming here, it's an act of sacrifice. You understand the pain of the children of Palestine. You are saying to the children of Palestine, your pain is our pain. You are saying to the children of Palestine, we will never enjoy our freedom as long as you don't enjoy freedom in Palestine. We are not free here as long as Palestine is not free. So comrades, you did not come because you are bored. You came because you understand the mission. That the mission is a total liberation of the oppressed all over the world. And that mission must continue. We thank the leadership of Gauteng. We thank all progressive forces that organized this gathering today. It's not the last one. As long as our children are being killed in Palestine, this place will become our permanent residence, because we must never allow them to forget, not even for a second, that they are murderers.
A murderer was captured this morning and tried today. Guilty. Sentence, death. Execution tonight at 6, all net, all channels. Would you like to know more?
If you think you're psychic, maybe you are.
Federal studies are being conducted in your community. Would you like to know more? Every school kid knows that arachnids are dangerous. However, Mormon extremists disregarded federal warnings and established Port Joe Smith, deep inside the arachnid quarantine zone. Too late, they realized that Dantana had already been chosen by other colonists, arachnids. Would you like to know more? The devastation we are seeing is unparalleled. Judging from early estimates, millions dead, a city in ruins.
Is that Geneva?
Goddamn bugs whacked us, Charlie.
The meteor was shot out of orbit by bug plasma that derived from Clendathu, the arachnids' home planet. Nothing lives in what was once called the Latin paradise.
Oh, Johnny, it's us.
Buenos Aires has been wiped off the earth.
It's home.
The Federal Council met moments ago and voted unanimously for mobilization to destroy the arachnid threat. Out of the ashes of Buenos Aires comes first sorrow, then anger.
The only good bug is a dead bug.
In Geneva, the Federal Council convenes.
We must meet the threat with our valor, our blood, indeed with our very lives, to ensure that human civilization, not insect, dominates this galaxy now and always.
Sky Marshal Deans announces plans for an offensive against Clendathu, source of the bug meteor that destroyed Buenos Aires. Every day, federal scientists are looking for new ways to kill bugs.
Your basic arachnid warrior isn't too smart, but you can blow off a limb, and it's still 86% combat effective. Here's a tip. Aim for the nerve stem and put it down for good.
Would you like to know more? Everyone's doing their part. Are you? The war effort needs your effort. At work, at home, in your community. We now break net and take you live to Fleet Battle Station Ticonderoga, deep inside the arachnid quarantine zone, where the men and women of the Federal Armed Services prepare to attack.
DXQ uplink on 2, 1, you're on. No one here in the AQZ knows exactly when the invasion of Clendathu will occur, but everyone's talking about it, and the talk says tomorrow. Here's a bunch of MI kids that look like they could eat bugs for lunch.
Yum, yum, yum.
So, Trooper, you're not too worried about fighting the arachnids?
Hey, shoot a nuke down a bug hole, you got a lot of dead bugs,
I just
right?
hope it's not over before we get some.
Some say the bugs were provoked by the intrusion of humans into their natural habitat, that a live and let live policy is preferable to war with the bugs.
Let me tell you something. I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all! Yeah! Oh, yeah! Yeah! Oh, yeah!
Good to see you. Very good.
A Prime Minister, a President, and a promise.
We will remain with you for as long as this takes.
Australia committing an extra 30 Bushmaster vehicles, taking our total commitment to 120.
Australia, shoulder to shoulder with our people, which is crucial and very important on the battlefield. So we are very thankful.
Australia, thank you.
The move follows a recent pledge of over $100 million in aid and the deployment of an RAAF wedge-tail reconnaissance aircraft to fly missions for NATO.
Security can't be considered to be just behind national borders.
And tonight, the world's largest economies making one of their largest commitments.
We're going to help Ukraine build a strong, capable defense across land, air and sea and deter against any and all threats.
The Prime Minister is back in Australia tonight, but may not be done with Russia yet, after a discussion with President Zelensky about further sanctions on Moscow.
It's also important to look at the supply chains and to see which countries are actually assisting Russia to continue war in Ukraine, and it's important to crack down on that.
More is going to be done, as the Prime Minister points out, because our support of Ukraine started early and it should continue late.
The Australian Defence Force is in trouble at a time where China is rising and the geopolitical landscape could not be more precarious. There are claims we only have enough weapons and ammunition to last 1 week in conflict. 6,400 soldiers left the force last financial year. Recruitment is 60% below target. It's so dire, the ADF is lowering fitness tests to boost numbers. This trend has some asking, is wokeism to blame? gender-neutral ration packs, a project to eliminate gender-specific language. Political correctness has been a focus, but is identity politics and inclusion risking our national security? Our second question for the jury: is our Defence Force too woke to fight a war?
Good afternoon. Former soldier turned politician Jackie Lambie is taking on the senior ranks of the Defence Force, referring them to the International Criminal Court. Let's go live to political reporter Jennifer Beshwadi in Canberra now. Jen, it's got to do with the war crimes report.
Yes, that's right, Ange. Good afternoon. Senator Jackie Lambie says that the senior command of the military have not been investigated over those alleged war crimes that took place in Afghanistan. She says that the Brereton report, which condemns members of the Special Forces, gave the commanders a free pass and they need to be held responsible. In a passionate speech to the Senate this afternoon, Jackie Lambie accused the government of shielding those military commanders, saying unless there's a proper investigation, the International Criminal Court in The Hague will take on the case.
There is a culture of cover-up at the highest levels of the Australian Defence Force. It is the ultimate boys' club. Well, today I say enough. Enough is enough. There will be no more marking your own homework. There will be no more throwing our diggers under the bus.
And meanwhile, former Prime Minister Scott Morrison has been speaking in London about the possibility of war with China. Mr Morrison, who initiated the AUKUS alliance between Australia, the United States and the UK, warned that the global economic impact of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be 50 times bigger than the war in Ukraine.
Disruption of such an event, which would inevitably involve great powers, is hard to conceive. It would make, COVID look like a headache when it came to the economic impact.
Now, he added that he doesn't believe that China wants to invade Taiwan, but warned that there is a risk of conflict if the so-called reunification objective isn't achieved peacefully. Ange?
OK, Jen, thank you.
There have been chaotic scenes once again in Melbourne. For a third day in a row, protesters have defied police and gathered in the city before the standoff boiled over at the Shrine of Remembrance late this afternoon. Ben Knight has the story.
It's been another long and difficult day in the Victorian capital. Yesterday, thousands marched. Today, it was hundreds, and ended in a standoff at the Shrine of Remembrance.
We want you to leave peacefully via St Kilda Road. There's a safe passage off to my right.
But a hard core of protests declined. And so, after an hours-long standoff and 3 days of running battles, police finally moved in.
They're not there to protest, they're there for a fight.
Day 3 of the Melbourne protests began early at the heavily fortified and damaged headquarters of the Construction, Forestry, Mining and Energy Union. Anyone who turned up in high-vis was quickly detained. Some were arrested as police braced for a much bigger group to arrive. But they never came. Instead, marchers followed yesterday's playbook, taking random routes around the city and dodging police until just before midday. Some marchers took shelter in city buildings.
They're shooting.
The crowd was split, but quickly joined up again and began heading for the Shrine of Remembrance.
Let them shoot us on hollow ground. Let them shoot us on hollow ground.
The police line surrounding the shrine grew gradually tighter, with occasional forays into the crowd to pick out protesters for arrest. Many of the marchers are union members, angry at having to choose between a jab and their job. Others are venting frustration after more than 230 days of lockdown in Victoria, and with weeks more to come.
What's happened to any other alternative than pushing the people to the brink?
But there were also signs of nationalist and so-called patriot groups, which have increasingly been choosing the shrine as their place of protest, to the outrage of the RSL.
I cannot comprehend the selfishness of people who had come to this sacred place and do this to Victoria's Shrine of Remembrance.
These people don't even deserve the right to hold the Australian flag. I served for 20 years in our army.
those events in Melbourne of the protests are very concerning, and that is unacceptable behaviour, and particularly at a time when those in Victoria are dealing with lockdowns and many other stresses.
Victoria is something of a paradox. It's one of the most progressive states in the country and has been ruled by Labor governments for 18 of the past 22 years. But at the same time, it's also been home to some of the most extreme right-wing groups in the nation, culminating in a gathering of neo-Nazis in the Grampians this year.
We are seeing clear signs, and the police are saying this from their intelligence intercepts, of right-wing extremist elements moving in and trying to hijack this. And that is really dangerous.
And every day, the unthinkable seems to happen again. Late this afternoon, a 4-day no-fly zone was declared over Melbourne. Protesters have vowed they will be back on the streets again tomorrow and every day. And so will police. Ben Knight, ABC News.
Opening the Allied case against the defendants, Chief American Prosecutor Justice Jackson.
Of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored, because it cannot survive their being repeated.
Sandy, it's nightcom. What you fucking do? You don't know?
No.
Viewers, you don't know who the cameraman is.
No.
You don't know why you're being made to see these things. Nor do I. You're seeing me. I can't even see you. I may be dead by the time you watch this. Very possibly are. You don't know who's the man who's making things he wants you to see. Destroy your television sets. Now. You must listen to no orders. That's all I can tell you for this point in humanity. Believe me.
That's advertising. I didn't really understand it.